Good afternoon and welcome to everyone. On behalf of the School Planning Committee and the project team, I'm pleased that we are able to check back in and offer everyone this, what we hope is a fairly comprehensive update on the Blanche Ames Elementary School project. We are so pleased to be able to share some of this information, and we're pretty sure that when you've seen some of the design elements in the building, that you're going to be excited, as we all are, about what this project holds for our students and for our community. Dawn, can you just go to our first thank you? So just as a quick recap for everyone, in November of 2019 was about the last time you heard from the project in a pretty big way, when our community passed both at the floor of town meeting at the ballot and the ballot box, the debt exclusion override to support this project. This is an MSBA, Massachusetts School Building Authority approved project with a total project budget of close to $95 million. We have specific reimbursement rates of which apply to eligible project costs associated with this project. That really helps to maximize taxpayer investment. We are working really hard, and we have done so since the beginning of this project, to be respectful of the fact that we need to be good stewards of Easton's taxpayers' dollars. Although the project was approved in 2019, that milestone was actually the culmination of over 2 years of work since we were originally invited into the project in 2017 through the MSBA. There is a fair amount of oversight that has to happen as dictated by MSBA requirements. A component of that oversight, it happens through the School Planning Committee here in the town of Easton. That planning committee is made up of representatives from the school district, from town departments, from community volunteers, and from educators. That committee also includes members of our project team, and key players on our project team include our owner's project manager, which is PMA, and our designer, which is Perkins Eastman. And we actually have members of both of those firms with us here today, and I'm going to ask them to take a moment and introduce themselves, just so as we go through this presentation, you'll be familiar with what firm they're from and their involvement. So you can start. Chad, maybe do you want to start?
Sure, thank you, Jane. So my name is Chad Crittenden. I am the project director working on behalf of the town of Easton for this project. I'm joined this afternoon by Mark Adrian and Chris Loeffler, both project managers with PMA. Also on PMA's team, we have had Chris Carroll, Walter Hartley, Chris Urbano, and John Pope. They're not here this afternoon, but they will be involved right through completion of the project. We're excited to continue our work on this project and eager to get this building underway and eventually open in the not so distant future.
Okay, I'm Dan Colley. I'm the project manager from Perkins Eastman.
And I'm Dawn Guariello, project designer with Perkins Eastman. Also on the team, we have a large group of folks from Perkins Eastman who helped draw the project, as well as Robert Bell, who's our managing principal in Boston. So many thanks to our very large team who helped put the documents for this together and advance the design.
Thanks. So Leisha, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what our theme has been throughout this project since the early days.
Sure. Thank you, Jane. Before I do, I just want to add that PMA and Perkins Eastman have been incredible to work with. So I want to make sure that the taxpayers know that this project has been in good hands, and we have been involved with them every step of the way. We see everything that they're doing, and they've been extremely communicative and thorough. throughout this process. So this project has been in very good hands since the very beginning. We're very excited about continuing our work with them. In terms of the project theme, we have what we consider a stellar education in the Easton Public Schools, particularly in our early elementary or pre-K to 2 programming. We did not, however, have the physical structures that were at a comparable level. So our theme throughout has been to bring the physical plant up to the level of education that the students are receiving. Our educators have always found a way to quote unquote make it work, but this is going to provide even more opportunities as they meet the skills and competencies of the 21st century to help their students to really excel. The building itself is created as a building as teacher. You're going to see a lot of elements of that, as well as a focus on creating small learning environments or small communities for our smallest learners. In terms of the name, the town may remember that we had a process where people could submit suggestions for names, and while we had several very worthy candidates, Blanche A. Ames really emerged as an apt role model for our children and for the children of Easton. She is very well known as an architect, as an inventor. She has been published as a botanical artist. She was a suffragette and fought for women's rights. She is an empowering woman figure of intelligence and stature in the history of Easton, and we're extremely proud for our youngest learners to learn about her as the building is named in her honor.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Cabral. So what we're going to do very quickly today is just focus on some of the major milestones that have happened in the last 20 or so months, I guess. Has it been that long? Since November of 2019. And then what we consider to be most exciting is we're actually going to share renderings and designs of the building. So folks are going to start to get a sense of the look and the feel of the spaces where our youngest learners will be spending their time. And then we'll have a quick update in terms of the procurement process so that we can get a builder on site. We have picked that firm, and we'll talk about how that process works a little bit, and then what's in store in terms of construction and construction scheduling. So without further ado, we're going to just jump right in. I'm going to turn it over now, I think, to Chad. He's going to take us through kind of the process of how you design a building.
Thank you, Jane. Yep, so since the project funding authorization vote in November of 2019, the design team and the project engineering team and all the sub-consultants have been hard at work with the planning committee and the education professionals in the community and police, fire, safety, all first responders to really bring this project to fruition. We start that process with the development of a series of focus groups. So these focus groups are set up by the school planning committee, but they include members from all over the community, not just school planning committee members. A few of the focus group examples are interiors, exteriors, sustainability, security, building systems, which are mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, the athletics and the site improvements and landscape. So it really is a comprehensive process, and every step of the design has lots of feedback from various parties and stakeholders within the community. So each one of these design submission milestones, there are 4 of them since the local funding authorization vote. For each of the 4 design milestones, we work with the designers and the school planning committee to develop a work plan, and the work plan identifies meetings for the various user groups. It identifies the school planning meetings where all of the discussions from the user groups are reviewed and vetted and verified and authorized by the school before they actually are incorporated into the design. So this sample is from design development. That is the first of 4 design submissions after the funding authorization. After design development, that submission goes into the MSBA, as do the next 3 submissions. That went into the MSBA in April of 2020, and we did receive comments back in May of 2020, indicating the MSBA was on board with the design progression at that phase. We also conduct 2 independent estimates at each of these design milestones. We reconcile those estimates, and then we also undergo an intensive value engineering process, whether cost reductions are needed or not. It doubles as a scoping exercise to confirm that the school planning committee really understands what's in the building and where the costs are within that building. So after DD, we move forward into the next design milestone, and that is 60% construction documents. Same as design development, we develop a work plan. We identify necessary focus groups where additional information is needed to support the design team and their subconsultants' development of the construction documents. At completion of 60% design, that again gets submitted to the MSBA. The MSBA provides review comments, and then we take those review comments and we roll right into 90% construction documents. By this time, the nuts and the bolts of the building are really there, and we're just kind of fine-tuning some of the leftover design decisions that need to be made. We do submit again to the MSBA, and we perform another round of estimates and another round of value engineering on the 90% package. This all happened last November, so that process through 90% took just about a year from the date of the local funding authorization. With the MSBA responses back on the 90%, then we move forward and create the 100% bid documents, which are also submitted to the MSBA, but we do not get comments or feedback from the MSBA, as they serve at that time as the bid documents and the bid package that is put out on the street to the subcontractors and general contractors.
Now, sorry, do you want me to go, Jane?
Nope, go right ahead.
All right, we're just going to do a quick design overview. And with that, Dan Colley is going to highlight some of the sustainability features of the new building.
Sure. We are targeting LEED Silver. Some of the highlights of that are our use of low emitting materials. We're actually going to chase 5 categories: paints, insulation, composite woods, ceilings, and flooring, which we're going to looking for EPDs, and which are environmental declarations to support that those materials will be healthy and hopefully non-emitting or zero emission. Our energy use reduction is at 36.8%, which is below the baseline, which would be the average building. And like an average school building, where performance is 36% better. Ultra low plumbing fixtures, we're also looking to save as much water as possible. We're looking at a 26% reduction in building water use, and we're also being very judicious outside and only irrigating the athletic fields. We're not irrigating the planting around the building. That's planting that is going to be drought resistant and tolerant of nature tolerance, so that doesn't need to be irrigated. From a parking standpoint, we have 8 carpool spots, 4 EV charging stations, and 4 low emitting vehicle parking spots on the site. We're looking at a building that is constructed with a minimum amount of recycled material of 20%. And we're going after a number of innovation points, and Dawn will share some of that with you a little later, which is really exciting. But one of them is beauty and design, and green education is another. We're looking at the building as a teaching tool, design with nature, and design to keep the little kids occupied and active in the building.
Great. So with that, I'd love to walk everyone through the site plan and give you some planning highlights about where the building will be on site, and look at some of the different components before we dive into some of the rendering. So at the top of the screen, we've got Columbus Ave, and then it travels down Spooner and Lothrop toward the bottom of the page. And what those are all doing are allowing access points in or out of the campus. You can see the existing middle school and RO on the left, and the high school is just off the screen to the lower left. So mostly everyone knows the campus and is familiar with it, but in case you're not, what we are doing is connecting those 3 streets, if you will, through the campus with the north-south connector road. And what that will allow us to do is to mitigate some of the current traffic problems that are existing on the site, if you will. We heard a lot about how that currently works and how this project may be able to help that and improve it. So this north-south connector becomes very important to the project. What it does allow is for access off of Columbus Ave from the north. You can travel south on that connector road, and the buses can come in from there or Spooner, and there's a bus loop just north of the building. So the building's the big white outline towards the lower middle part of the screen. And it's basically being built on the existing fields that are currently behind the existing Parkview building. And this bus loop allows access to drop students off. It's approximately 16 buses long, and will allow direct access to the students by this secondary entry. The main entry allows cars to come off of Columbus or Spooner and travel around the building from the south to via a very large car drop loop queue that's 75 plus vehicles long. And then the cars drop separately at the visitor and accessible parking loop via the main entry. And what that does is allow for separate bus and car from a safety standpoint. So no one's ever crossing any sort of vehicular access points. There's, as you can see, parking around the building. There's a community entry to the south that's accessible to the both the community space in the building as well as the central core, which the gym and cafeteria that can be used for community purposes. We've got 2 softball fields. One's an official softball field. The other is a grass softball field with an overlay of a multi-use field, as well as an additional multi-use field between the new Blanche Ames Elementary School and the middle and RO schools to the west. With that, we've got 3 intentionally designed play areas. One at the front of the school is a nature play area, which you'll see some renderings of, and that's really encouraging play on natural structures. Then we have the Ames adventure play between the building and the fields that's only separated by the bus loop. And it's worth pointing out the bus loop is one way from the north and gets blocked off during the day so that students have free access from the building via safe travel over the bus loop. And that also dual purposes as a hardscape. You can see a lot of the colors in the rendering. Those are paintings on the roadway that allow for hopscotch and a 1 mile walking path via multiple loops around the play area as well as on the bus loop. But there's a lot of different ways that that can be used as hardscape. And then the last play area is the specific pre-K play, which is directly off of the pre-K wing, which is the one to the left, screen left. And the pre-K area is direct access off of that wing and fenced in for safety purposes. The last feature on the site is the middle school parking lot upgrade that will happen as part of this project.
So we have been very fortunate to be able to afford within this project a redo of the middle school parking lot. Dawn mentioned that there's a connector road that runs out to Columbus Ave, and there are probably many people who will be listening who are familiar with how they get into how you come into the middle school off of Columbus Ave right now. Our traffic engineer felt that entry could be smoothed a little bit, and that's part of this redesign. Also, there's a little bit of some space between the entrance to the existing middle school and the drop-off area, and a reconfiguration of that parking lot to allow individuals to access the new connector roads more easily. It actually increases the parking lot a little bit by about 3 spots. So it goes up to 86 parking spots in there versus the 83 that were in there previously. So it's a little bit more parking and a lot better circulation.
Great. So with that, I'd like to walk you through some of the exterior renderings that have been done and just highlight some of the areas that I described on the site plan. So this is a view from the bus loop. You can see some of the paintings and spots for each student that are laid out on the hardscape of the bus drop. The main entry is just under the tree to the right. And you can see some of that natural play area to the right, and then a hint of the Ames Adventure Play area to the left. So the gymnasium is directly in front of us, and the media center is above the main entry. So this nature themed playground that I described, you can see here with some of the precedents and the site plan of it. There's a platform, a custom climber, and lots of wood steppers and a spinner, fully accessible and available to all students, whether it's at arrival or during recess. Plenty of fun things for the students to connect directly with nature. And here are some of the renderings. You can see, and again, these are just part of our model. And, you know, as they're built, they may look a tiny bit different, but for design purposes, this is what has been planned. So this is at the main entry. This is a closer view with a seat wall. At the main entry is to the right of your screen. The media center and the Discovery Terrace off of the media center is to the far right. The gym is center on the screen with this natural play area in the foreground. And the car drop is to the right of the screen. So that's where all the cars will drop the students. The bus drop is to the left, just behind the view of the climber. This is the view out from under one of the canopies. That is intentional. The main entry wanted to be scaled and safe for the students to arrive and feel comfortable. We've got these timber canopies throughout the design that you'll see. And part of that is to provide warmth and a covering and scale the multi-story building, because these are really young learners who are arriving at one of the biggest buildings that they may regularly attend school in. The Ames Adventure Play area, this is a elongated, very large play area between the main building, the gymnasium in particular, and the fields that I described, the softball fields and the multipurpose fields. And this has a lot of structures. We were asked for lots of swings, climbing structures, slides that are built into the hill. So this gives you a flavor for some of what our landscape designers traverse. They're fabulous. They've done a great job sort of connecting to the Ames theme and the adventures, which is part of the building theme as they grow, but to recognize the connection to some outdoor fun, if you will. So there's a hint of, you know, planets and that sort of thing that students can learn while they're also playing. And these are some renderings. So you're looking back at the building. The gymnasium is that large structure sort of in the top of the screen at the middle. You can see the bus loop that is closed off during the day, as I mentioned. And there's a secondary entry just to the left of the gym where students can come directly out from the gymnasium or from the main corridor in the building. And I'll show that to you in the floor plan in a moment. So they can directly connect to here at any point during the day for recess or outdoor play. This is a view from that entry. So you can see the fields in the background, you can see the backstop of the softball field to the left. So there's not only a designated play area, but lots of fields for students to play soccer or kickball or just run around during recess or PE class. And this is looking back at the building. And then the pre-K playground, no renderings to show, but this is a floor plan, site plan at the top. Again, sort of scaled for the youngest learners, 4- and 5-year-old, and it's themed around agriculture. And you can see the different, that's not real grass, that's colored play surface, but it looks like a field, and there's a tractor to climb into, and all these fun features for the students to play. There's also a tot track that travels around, and there's an overhang to store the tricycles and riding vehicles, but it also, there'll be stop signs and, you know, places that students can yield to other riders. So kind of a fun way to connect to the play area itself. And then the last feature I didn't point out in the site plan, but should have, is the learning courtyard. So this is nestled between the two kindergarten and grades 1 and 2 at the second floor wings, and I'll point it out in a moment in the floor plan. But this is really an outdoor learning space. It's both for outdoor classes to learning and ties to nature, as well as, you know, you can see there's a area where we're collecting some stormwater with a small wooden bridge over it. And that can really get tied to curriculum, and the teachers can be creative about how they can implement these connections into the curriculum. And these are just some of the views: outdoor learning within this courtyard, and it's fenced off for security purposes. Students can't just go running off into the parking lot. And here you can see the bridge and one of the porches. We're calling these front porches in the background. And this is one of the classroom wings, 2-story. And at the first story, there's these timber canopies that I described throughout the design, but they also are overhangs that serve as protection from the elements, snow, rain, but still allow a full class to come outside and be underneath. And we've got rain chains and opportunities for the students to learn while in their natural element. Okay, so this is the first floor plan. Here's the learning courtyard in the right between the two kindergarten wings on the right-hand side. And these wings are intentionally skewed. They're intended to be clusters of 4, so that recognizing that at this age, students can really start to recognize, you know, 80 to 100 of their fellow students. So the classrooms of 3 or 4 are intentional in all of these wings and intentionally skewed to break down these really long corridors that are a little more natural. And you'll see a few renderings of those. So we've got 3 classroom wings, these 2 kindergarten ones separated by the learning courtyard on the right, the pre-K wing, which I spoke about with pre-K play directly off of it on the left. The main entry is kind of in the middle on the left. And this whole central core is really community use, as in shared spaces by the students, but also available for community resources if desired. So we've got a gymnasium, and then we have 2 cafeterias. One's a larger cafeteria, one's a little smaller cafeteria from a scale standpoint, recognizing not all students may be comfortable in a larger cafeteria. And so the gym and the main cafeteria are separated by a 2-story platform. a 2-sided platform that allows for performances to happen in the larger gym or in a more intimate setting in the cafeteria. And it can be closed off from one side or the other for acoustic purposes. We've got 2 music classrooms directly adjacent to that platform. And then you can see at the main entry with that largest arrow, we've got the main administration, the nurse, there's some mechanical, the kitchen divides the 2 cafeterias. There's the community room at the bottom next to the community entry. It's that yellow space on the right. And then up the corridor from that, we've got the secondary entry off of the bus loop. And that connects to the Ames Adventure Playground that I described earlier. So with that, I'd like to zoom in on one of the first floor corridors and cluster of classrooms. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dawn. Before you
please.
move away from this floor plan, I don't know,
Sure.
Dr. Cabral, would you like to comment a little bit about the fact that the dark purple spaces on both this floor plan and the floor plan above, and kind of what those indicate and how they work?
Yes, so each of the light colored purple spaces are classrooms. The kindergarten and pre-kindergarten classrooms all have small size bathrooms in them for student access. But then in between, interspersed, you see these darker purple class spaces. These are offices and working areas for our special education program. It's critical that these are interspersed throughout the building, that it's accessible for students and professionals to use easily, and the students don't have to be removed far from their classrooms to either receive individual services like speech therapy or occupational therapy. They can be used for testing, for meetings, and you can see that there's only one sensory room in the pre-K area because our pre-kindergarten program is actually a special education program, and so it's interspersed throughout. But then in the rest of the building, you'll see the darker purple, not just segregated in certain areas of the school, of course, because we want to make sure that they're fully integrated in each of the wings as appropriate for grade level.
Great, thank you. And that's an excellent point to bring up. The occupational and physical therapy rooms are up the closest to the gymnasium at the screen, at the top of the screen. There are calming rooms, sensory rooms, and then also conference rooms for IEP conferences adjacent to some of the offices that Alicia mentioned. So with that, I'd like to take you into one of the corridors as an example. Our goal from the very beginning of this project was to be specific about the design of this building for the youngest learners. And our goal is to facilitate play and to recognize that play is really the occupation of children, and that's how they learn. So a lot of what you'll see and recognize as the building gets built is some of these features that are implemented both throughout the corridors, also the ramp, which I'll get to later, but also within the classroom. So, you know, we hope to make connections to outdoors, to give interactive capabilities for teachers to work with students and allow them to learn in an interactive way, and specifically to evoke curiosity in these youngest learners. So you can see benches and little areas of escape, whether it's under this little built structure. You can see here, we've got peg walls, we've got whiteboards. Students can measure things, they can draw things throughout the corridor. So really our goal is to create a learning opportunity on any surface that is available to us. In the pre-K area, we have some mirrors that students can interact with themselves. And then also in strategic areas, glass that students can interact with each other. As Dr. Cabral mentioned, these classrooms are paired. I spoke about 4 of them. This is one side of that cluster. So there's a mirror image of this on the other side of the corridor. But this is a pairing of a pre-K classroom or a typical kindergarten classroom because they're about the same size. And what happens here is that we're really bringing that playful journey into the classrooms. And each of these classrooms is zoned for different types of learning, whether it's student storage, whether it's art, whether it's science and STEM, or they can, you know, they can manipulate things. So each of these rooms is specifically designed to be flexible. It's got built-in cabinets and cubbies. Also the toilet rooms that Dr. Cabral mentioned directly off the classrooms, but all of the furniture and interactive, you know, whiteboards and easels and that sort of thing can all be flexible within each space. And of course, you can see the multitude of windows at the exterior at the top that have this connection to nature. We have a lower sill here, and that's intentional. It's only 1'4" off the floor, but it's because these youngest learners are not that large yet that we want them to be able to stand and see directly out the window and make those connections to nature. And here you can see a rendering of a typical pre-K or kindergarten classroom. And again, there's a couple sinks as well as the restroom. So these students in theory have everything that they need within these classrooms. And here's another view of it with the teaching wall in the background. So let's take you upstairs to the second floor. A similar footprint, but each of these wings now becomes a grade 1 or 2 wing. So all of these classrooms upstairs can be, they're sized for your typical grade 1 or grade 2. They're still in their clusters of 3 to 4, and they also are connected with these small group rooms that are the purple, the darker purple between the lighter pairs of classrooms. And that's intentional, whether it's for, you know, a little bit of pullout or some specialty reading or a little bit quieter space that the teacher just, you know, needs to use that space, it's available to them. So each of these pairs of classrooms has that. In the corridors, which we'll see a rendering of in a moment, there's a little bit more flexible learning. And that's intentional for encouraging discovery and interaction between students. So that can be used whether it's group work or that students just have a project going on that, you know, maybe there's something else going on in the classroom, different, they break out into their groups. That is in a space that they can come together and collaborate within the corridor. You can see through the middle, there are 2 art rooms over those music rooms I described. The gym and cafeteria are 2-story spaces. So you'll either be able to see over a railing or through windows into the gym. And then the media center is at the top of this ramp, which I'll get to in a moment, but this ramp will take you from the first floor to the second floor without any steps. So everyone from a universal design standpoint can traverse the ramp. It's very wide and allows for a full class to get from one floor to the other, recognizing that these young learners are still, learning to navigate stairs in groups of 15 to 20 students. And we look, to provide for safety first. So this was an opportunity for us to be able to do that. And it connects you directly to the media center at the second floor, which I spoke about. It's over the main entry. And then the larger purple spaces are dedicated special ed rooms, all with specific functions. I don't know, Felicia, if you want to speak to those or just mention their existing programs that we're providing adequate space for. And those all have their own dedicated restrooms as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We feel very strongly in the Easton Public Schools that we want our learners with us and we want to have them in the least restrictive environment. So over the last 6 years or so, we've been able to slowly incorporate a developmental skills program, therapeutic learning center program, and foundations programs, which are some higher level needs of special education students, but it provides the opportunity for them to be fully inclusive with their age peers, their neighbors, their friends. And as I said, this is extremely important to us. It's a project that we have had extreme support from the community on, and we're very thankful for that, because we believe that we can provide a stellar level of service for our students in district, and that they don't need to leave the district to be educated elsewhere. And so those specialized programs are where you see the larger purple areas throughout the wings.
Great. And there's also an additional occupational therapy room up here. There's a suite of offices up here, as well as reading rooms, et cetera. So as you can tell, there's quite a bit of service offerings in a variety of different size spaces throughout the school. So with that, I'm going to take you down a typical corridor, whether it's grade 1 or grade 2. They're mostly the same. They're themed in different ways and colored in different ways, so students recognize where they are in the building. But what's happening here is really a creation of collaboration spaces that allows for communicating and resolving conflicts, managing tasks, for students to come together in their little cohort of 3 or 4 classrooms and learn to work together and to use this space in a collaborative way. And just like downstairs, I showed you a pairing of these typical classrooms, with that center space being the small group room, and both classrooms have access to that room, so they can use that as they see fit. There's built-in casework, just like the lower floors. We've got a plethora of exterior windows. We've got connections to the corridors. And in this case, we have lockers in the corridors versus the cubbies that are in the classrooms downstairs. And here you can see a typical classroom. It's, the teaching wall is directly ahead. There's built-in casework, and you can see all the connections to outdoors. So with that, I want to take a step back and talk about a little bit of the process and the design. Dr. Cabral mentioned the Blanche A. Ames school name and the background that was provided on her and what she meant to the community. So with that, we, through Dr. Cabral's office, connected with a handful of very intelligent, well-spoken high school students in Easton who grew up in town and have very strong connections to the history here. And they did a presentation for us on what they thought it was important to tie the architecture back to Easton, and specifically to Blanche's legacy. So one thing that came out of that, it was a phenomenal presentation, and it's recorded and on the website. So if anyone wants to see it, please go watch it. I encourage you. There's a lot of information there. These girls are great. But what they talked about implementing was a timeline of Blanche Ames' legacy and life, and they put together a concept for that. So with that presentation, we brought on our graphics team and presented back what we thought we heard in a way that we thought we might be able to tie to the architecture. So with that, our team put together sort of 4 buckets of content based on Blanche's legacy in science, engineering, art, and humanity. She did all these fabulous things. We had to sort of put them into different categories, and then we color coded them in a way that the youngest learners can interact with pictograms, like visuals, because not everyone at the school will be reading yet, and tie some of her most important legacy features into the architecture. So it was sort of a back and forth, and it's been great. And honestly, we have a meeting with them tonight to bring them up to speed on this. But what came out of that was some experiential graphics. And specifically, the girls spoke about this ramp that I talked about that takes you from the first floor up to the second and sort of takes you to the media center. And there are 4 themes that, as you traverse up or down the ramp, create, care, discover, and invent. And they're color coded, as I mentioned, and each area has graphics and interactive capabilities. So this is just a quick, I'm not expecting that anyone can read this, but these are different panels. And I'll show you a rendering of what it will look like when it's built, or similar to, not exact, but about her life and legacy. So here's an example of an orchid puzzle along the ramp that the students can manipulate and put into what they believe the orchid could look like. There's a slider that a question can be written. Have you said please and thank you today? People can say yes or no. They can vote on, would you rather be invisible or be able to fly? And students can flip these little interactive pieces at the landing of the ramp to vote on, and it's interactive, and an adult can change the question every once in a while. So these panels I spoke about also have interactiveness. So there's a magnifying lens or interactive discs that slide up or down and speak to the orchid, electricity and light bulb. I'm not going to go through everything, but this starts to give you a flavor of what the graphics on the one side and then the interactive and information pieces on the other side will be as you travel up this 2-story ramp. And then this is what it will look like from the cafeteria. We've got this wood wall with an orchid, which is part of what Blanche is known and famous for. And then throughout the journey of the ramp, because we spoke about the journey of learning, students can learn about Blanche, learn about her legacy, and also interact with these features that will make the journey up and down this ramp a lot more interesting than just walking.
And before you leave that, Dawn,
Sure.
I just wanted to note, part of the designers really listening to the user groups and all of the functions that we felt were necessary for this really important project. You can see that from the inside of the ramp, it's very interactive. It looks like a children's museum. It's engaging, it's got wonderful colors, and it's all at the sight lines of our littlest learners. But then from the outside, as a community space, you can see it's got a very classic look, very muted colors, very natural timber and natural sunlight, so that community members can make full use of the space and you don't necessarily feel like you're in a small children's space. And so it's got that double function and really get as much bang for the taxpayer commitment to this as possible. It can be used for many years to come with any possible function you can imagine for a space of this size. So we're very thankful for them for hearing us and hearing those very tall orders that we gave them and being able to incorporate all of that into the design. The other point I just wanted to mention quickly was it is universal design that the children can walk up and down both functionally but also together. It was important to us to be very inclusive in this project, and if we have learners who have mobility issues, whether it's a child who's in a wheelchair or someone who may have an injury and be on crutches, we didn't want to necessarily have to separate children when they're going from one part of the building to another. The art rooms are on the second floor, the media center is on the second floor, and then the gymnasium's on the first floor, and the music rooms are on the first floor. So first and second graders are going to need to come down. Kindergarten and pre-kindergarten students are going to need to go up. This way we can do it safely and we can be sure that everyone's included and we're doing it together. And again, this was a real point for us to want, to desire to incorporate it into the building, and I believe it was done masterfully.
Great, thank you. And we could talk for an hour on this ramp alone, so I'm doing my best not to get into every feature, but the colors mean something. That was, Blanche created a colorway, and these all connect back to her legacy. So much of this, all of this is about her and about students learning. So I'm just walking you through what some of this looks like as you go up and down the ramp, and you can see the wood feature of the orchid wall. And this is from above. We've got these little seat windows. You can see the green sort of square. There's a student sitting in there. That's looking towards the media center. And then on the right, kind of looking down towards the cafeteria. And that's the stage that you see on the right. So with that, we're going to transfer to process again, but that's sort of the high level design where we've come and to get us to the end of our construction documents phase.
And one of the things that I just want to comment on is it's very apparent, I think, to anybody who's seeing these, how carefully all of the elements of this building have been curated, you know, just even in terms of the ramp and thinking about what do we need for our youngest learners. And some of it is very obvious. I think this is very obvious. But the other piece that I want to make people aware of is there's a lot of things that have happened behind the scenes during the design process that have also been really carefully thought out in terms of what kind of flooring materials are we using to ensure that those kinds of elements also are durable and maintainable, and that input has been gotten. You know, we've worked with our facilities folks on all of that. It's what's the access in and out of the building, and the relationship of nursing spaces to student spaces. There has been as much thought to the elements of this building that might not be so obvious and apparent as there has been to the elements like this that kind of are staring you in the face and are make us all so excited. So I did just want to point that out for folks who are taking this little tour and wondering about other features of the building.
Great, thank you. I think we're going to turn it back over to Chad with PMA to finish off the process for us.
Thank you, Dawn. That's very, very exciting and certainly a tough act to follow. We're excited to bring all of that to life over the next year and a half. Really, it will be a tremendous building. All right, back to the process stuff. Real quickly, pre-qualification under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 149. It's a two-step process. Step number one is pre-qualification of interested subcontractors, filed sub-bidders, we call them, and general contractors. We posted that last year, and we received 128 applications from interested subcontractors and general bidders for this project. Really is a tremendous response. I think market timing here was impeccable. So now we have those packages in hand. The districts is responsible to assemble a pre-qualification committee. Again, under the statute, there are 4 members on that committee. One of them is from the design team, one from the project management team, and 2 representatives from the awarding authority. With that team of 4 people, they had the arduous task of going through each of the 128 qualifications packages and scoring each of the individual contractors on a series of statutory questions and categories and totaling up the points to determine whether or not they were pre-qualified bidders. Jump to the next slide. So timing of all this started back in October of 2020. We had responses come in November 11, 2020. And then those were reviewed right through the Thanksgiving holiday, and notice to pre-qualified firms was issued. Out of the 128, 8 of them were general contractors, and pre-qualification committee met in early December 2020, and those firms that were pre-qualified were invited to bid on the project when the bid documents were published early the following year. Next slide, please. All right, so fast forward a couple months until February 23rd when we opened the general bids. We received 6 general bids out of the 8 pre-qualified general contractors. The three lowest journal bidders were all within $1 million of each other, which is very, very good. The building committee, planning committee met to review these bids. Again, so our low bid was around $63 million. The MSBA budget was $74.886 million. So these bids are more than $10 million below budget. Keep in mind that the MSBA budget also includes a second bid package for wastewater treatment plant upgrades that are necessary to support the additional flow from the new building. That contract will be bid out early this summer, 2021, and that work will happen this summer while the students are out. The estimated value of that is $750,000. So we do need to set aside that pool of money for that bid package, which is a couple months out. But we did have the other 6 bids and a motion to find the lowest responsible, or to find and award the lowest responsible bid to Brate Builders for $63.489 million was made by the planning committee on March 3rd. Since then, a contract has been executed with Brate Builders, and we are currently entering our 3rd week of construction. Today on site, there's trees are cleared, site fences are up, site offices are in place, and the site earthwork contractor will mobilize later on this week. Also happening right now is some of the video documentation for existing conditions of abutters. This is a request that came about during the design phase, so we did incorporate that into the contract. So those of you abutting the project site will be contacted directly by the general contractor. That should have actually happened by now. April and May, we'll see earthwork and foundation activities on the site, and then structural steel will start to show up in June of 2021. We expect that we will have a topping off ceremony likely July of 2021. And once the steel is topped off, we'll pour slabs and begin to get the building weather tight in advance of the winter months. And then during the winter months, they can work on the interior build out and finishes of the building. And that will continue into the following year until we hit our October 14th, 2022 substantial completion deadline. After that, we do have roughly 2 months for furnishings, fixtures, equipment, and technology installation. And then we also need to move the staff and students from their existing buildings into the new building, currently slated to occur during the December 2022 break, so that when the students return from that break in January of 2023, they're able to occupy the new building. Once the new building is occupied and the old buildings are vacated, we will abate and demolish the existing Parkview building and complete the final site improvements, which happen within the footprint of that existing building. Next slide, please. Very big picture, project schedule, it's same timeline we just discussed. So design was around a year, bid took a period of 2 months. And then the building project will be from March 2021 to October 2022. This is the exact same timeline that we've been presenting for more than 3 years now. So we are right where we should be and right where we expected to be. And then the field construction will happen after the existing building is abated and demolished, and the remainder of the parking and play areas that are within the footprint of that building. All right, and with that, Jane, Alicia, thank you very much. We're excited to be part of this project, and I will turn it back to you for final comments.
So, you know, I'm going to invite anybody who wants to chime in here. I think I'm happy that we got to share this with the community. I think there has been so much going on behind the scenes over the last year and a half. I know a lot of it has been happening, the work has been happening without updates to the community on a regular basis. Obviously, now that things are going to start happening on that site and a building is going to start to emerge, I think the updates are going to be a little bit more obvious as you drive by the site. But we will be doing our best to kind of keep the community involved and to post pictures and you know, design updates as the design continues to come to life through the building of the Blanche Ames Elementary School. I'd like to thank all of the folks who were involved in this process. Obviously, our design team has been a delight to work with. I hope they feel the same about us. But to all the educators who contributed, to all of the community members who contributed, to all of the abutters who contributed, to members from the various town departments, DPW, fire and police, those contributions have been really instrumental in getting us to this point. And so I want to acknowledge all of that good work that's happened. And lots more good stuff to come. Dr. Cabral, I'm sure you have some comments.
No, I would only like to provide the same sentiment of appreciation that you did to those exact groups. I hope each one of them sees their influence on this design and on this building and knows that they were a significant contributor. Certainly couldn't have done this without them. And we believe that the process that PMA put together for us has made it so that all the constituents of the community who wanted to participate really were able to, and getting the benefit of the lens of all the different users and consumers of this area, it only made it so much better. So we are extremely thankful for that. So I would only express my appreciation as well. Thank you to everyone who contributed.
Can I just say that you've been a great client, fabulous to work with. Everyone's been responsive. Even in the middle of a pandemic, we've had all the answers we need, and appreciate all the work that everyone has been doing to keep education being delivered in Easton. But throughout the process, you've been, you know, such a great group to work with, and PMA and Chad and his entire team for being organized and a good teammate. Nothing like this project comes together better than with a team that works well together. So we're appreciative of them and their expertise. And in my career of 20 plus years designing public schools in Massachusetts, this has been one of the most fun and hopefully rewarding projects I've ever been able to work on. You know, this is a unique age group to design for. And from day one of the interview, it has been nothing short of exciting to implement all of these learning features and know that we are, you know, going to help influence the education of all the young learners in Easton. It's just been one of the best projects I've been able to work on. So thank you to your entire team from our team for allowing us to be creative and, you know, bring our ideas forward and have them well received. So we appreciate it.
Thank you, Dawn.
I think that wraps us up for today, and just stay tuned. There's lots of more good stuff to come. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.